If you're a hunter, a warrior, if you're practicing situational awareness, or you're just trying to develop heightened perceptions in the woods, then you've probably heard of something that people call owl vision, splatter vision, or wide angle vision. In this video, I'm going to help us understand how our habits of awareness limit our visual capabilities. I'm going to give you a full understanding of wide angle vision and give you specific exercises for developing this awareness superpower. Here's a forest scene with a gray fox in the center of the scene. This picture is what our mind tells us we're seeing. A clear scene, much like a photo. But what we're actually seeing is more like this. The center of our vision is very clear and capable of seeing great detail. But the further we move from our center, or foveal vision, into our peripheral vision, the more blurry things become. To see this in action, pause the video. Pick up a book. Look at a single word on the top of the page. Notice how clear it looks. Now, keep your eyes on that same word. Just stare at it and try to read the text on the bottom of the page. You're going to notice that it's too blurry to read. You've just seen firsthand the difference between foveal vision and peripheral vision. Now, like most things in life, there's not really a clear line between foveal and peripheral. We have more cone cells in the center of our vision, and the cone cells are more sensitive to detail and color. Rod cells begin to dominate as we move away from the center of our vision, and the rod cells are not as good at discerning that detail. Because of this, and because of cultural preferences, we've learned to see using a method that I call foveal hopping. When we're out in the woods, our vision darts from one spot to another. We're largely unaware of our peripheral vision. But why would we even want to be tuned into our peripheral vision if it can't see the same amount of detail? The reason is that just as our cone cells are more sensitive to detail, our rod cells are more sensitive to motion, and they function better in low light situations. So in practice, a person who is foveal hopping is almost blind compared to someone who's tuned into their peripheral. Because they notice only the center of their vision, they're at the mercy of their mind's choices of what's important to look at. If I'm foveal hopping and I look at a deer, well, I'll miss the oyster mushrooms that are on a log just a few feet away, and the person that's hiding alongside the trail just ahead. The most glaring example of this mode of foveal hopping is when we engage in trail staring. You've all seen this happen before. You've probably seen it in yourself. If you've ever sat alongside a trail in plain sight, you may have noticed that 90% of the people walking by, they don't even see you. They're staring at the trail, if not at their cell phone, right? And their peripheral vision is turned off. You are effectively invisible, even though you are clearly in plain sight. Here's that deer I talked about. Again, we imagine that we see the whole picture in detail, but what we really see is a detailed center that fades to blurry. If all we see is the center, then we won't be aware of clues in our peripheral. If you decide to chase this deer and you're not aware of your peripheral, you might not notice the catbrier that might cut your legs, or more importantly, the line of barbed wire that's going to clothesline you. And we certainly won't notice the raspberry plants on the left that tell us that this might be a good place to come back to in a few months for a delicious treat. I hypothesize that this peripheral method of seeing the world, this was our ancestors' default mode of vision. At Rewild U, I get to see students shift into peripheral. And when they do, they begin to notice things that would be pretty important to our ancestors. If you're a hunter, or you practice awareness skills, you've probably experienced this yourself. Moments when you seem hyper-aware of your environment, you can sort of take in the whole picture in a way that you can't when you're foveal hopping. If you'd like to develop this awareness superpower, I'm going to explain how. With the exercises I share in this video, you'll be able to develop this wide-angle vision in a surprisingly short time. Still, like any other habit, we have to break our old one and form a new one. So be patient with yourself. Here's the secret. Like a Zen master telling someone that they've already awakened, but they just don't realize it, the truth about your vision is that you are already seeing the full range of your foveal and peripheral vision. We just aren't aware that we're seeing it. Remember those pictures of the fox and the deer? I said that our vision is actually like this, but when we add in awareness, or more aptly lack of awareness, then our picture actually looks more like this. When we practice foveal hopping, we're effectively blind to everything except what is centered in our visual field. We move from seeing one dot of awareness surrounded by darkness to another. So what is more important than what we're actually able to see is what we are aware of. Where we put our awareness within our visual field is the true key to this. To train ourselves into focusing our awareness consciously, we have to practice two things. First, we have to practice bringing awareness to the edges of our peripheral vision. When we do this, we will automatically retain our ability to be aware of our foveal. Don't worry, you're not going to lose it. Then, we'll start to see the real picture delivered by our whole visual field. Secondly, and even more importantly, we have to retrain our habit of collapsing our vision into foveal every time that we notice something interesting. Exercise 1. Entering wide-angle vision. The first method of training is the easiest, and it's going to give you a moderate boost in your skills right away. All you have to do is find a place to sit with the scene in front of you. This can be in the forest, this can be in the city. Find a distant object straight ahead of you to look at. Keep your eyes fixed on that object. Now, expand your awareness into your peripheral vision. Don't change where you're looking. Just look straight ahead, but become aware of what's on the edges. I'm not just talking about to the left and the right, but to the upper and lower ranges of your peripheral as well. The cool thing is that when you do this, your center of vision will remain in your awareness as well, because you're so habituated to it. Again, you're not going to lose it. With this simple exercise of bringing your awareness to your peripheral, you've just expanded your vision to its full range. This is the type of vision that we'll be trying to make our default using the next exercises. Exercise 2, walking wide-angle vision. Like any skill, it's relatively easy to practice it under the controlled environment of exercise 1. But usually, we're moving, and our eyes are scanning the environment instead of staring straight ahead. So, now we add some realism to the mix. To practice this exercise, we walk down a path or a sidewalk or just through the woods. Really, you can do this anytime that you're moving. Let your eyes rove about however they desire, but try to resist the habit of collapsing into foveal vision. As your eyes rove, keep your awareness at the edges of your peripheral. You notice how you can now take in the entire scene, even as it shifts when you look around yourself. This exercise is essential because it helps us to break the habit of falling again and again into foveal. You may feel like you can't really zoom in on the details of specific things, and for this exercise, try to resist that urge to do so. You're going to see something interesting in the woods. Try to resist that collapsing. Stay in peripheral. we're going to address that inability to zoom in exercise 4. But in this exercise, remember, we're just training ourselves out of the habit of collapsing our awareness. Exercise 3, conversation, wide-angle vision. Now things get a little bit more difficult. One of the best places to practice staying in wide-angle vision is during a conversation. Most of us have trained ourselves into seeing only a person's face when we talk with them. Somebody could walk right up next to you, tap you on the shoulder without you even noticing. When we stay in wide angle, we become more aware of that person's body language, of the surrounding environment, and of your friend who's trying to sneak up on you. To practice this exercise, it's the same as the other ones. Now, however, we're looking into the person's face. We don't have to scan around a whole lot, but do if that feels right. The important thing is to give your full attention to that person, but at the same time, be aware of your peripheral. If you master this during conversations, then you can up the ante and try it when you're engaged in media. Yes, media. Media is designed to hypnotize us into entering that foveal vision. In fact, movies, video games, they are designed specifically to move our foveal vision to certain places in that screen. If you can watch a movie and still be aware not only of the whole screen, but of the environment, the room that you're in, then you're starting to really get this. A brief note before I introduce the last exercise. You're going to find that it's more difficult to bring awareness to your peripheral when you are looking up close at something. This is one of the reasons that it's easier to sneak up on someone who is writing in their journal than it is to sneak up on someone who is watching a wolf in the distance. If you practice moving your awareness into your peripheral, make sure to practice it when your eyes are focused at different ranges, from far distant objects to something up close in your hand. Okay. With the first 3 exercises, we're retraining our mind to notice what's in our peripheral vision. But there is still a major problem, and that is our habit of collapsing into foveal over and over again. Because of this foveal hopping habit, we'll be able to retain our wide-angle vision only for a moment or two. But as soon as something grabs our attention, boom, we'll go right back into foveal. Unless we train ourselves out of this, we'll be able to retain wide-angle vision only for brief moments. And although that's pretty cool in itself, it's much more useful to have wide-angle vision be our default mode of seeing. In fact, if you think about it, there are very few situations in which we need to be locked into our foveal vision. Even quite delicate tasks, we can do those while retaining our wide-angle vision. So if we train this intelligently, we can approach being in wide-angle vision 99 to 100% of the time. Yes, our habit is to focus in when we're, for instance, sewing something and be completely unaware, but that's not necessary. We can train ourselves out of that into peripheral. Exercise 4, training ourselves out of foveal hopping. Walk down a path in wide-angle vision. When you sense movement, or something catches your interest, turn your eyes, go ahead and look at it. But when you do, keep your awareness in your peripheral. Notice that you can identify the source of the movement, even be aware of details of it in your foveal, while simultaneously being aware of your peripheral. Continue on the walk, practicing this over and over and over again. Each time you do it, you're going to reshape the foveal hopping habit. When you begin this exercise, you'll probably find that your vision collapses into foveal quite often. You're going to look over, boom, and your peripheral will be gone. That's okay. You're just learning this. When you collapse, just take conscious note of it. Say to yourself, I collapsed into foveal again. Then move on continue the exercise. What you're doing is you're bringing consciousness to where you place your awareness. The more you do this, the more that you will have conscious control of your awareness, rather than having it run on autopilot. Here's a fun tip. At Reweld University, we get to do this for real, especially if we have a group class. What we do is just make a habit all the time of trying to sneak up on each other, hide on each other. This means that when you're walking down a path, you better be aware of your environment, looking around and kind of scanning for ninjas. If you don't have a group of people to do this with, you can use your imagination to do the same thing. All you do is pretend that your environment is filled with ninjas, and you better spot them before they get you. So, as you walk along, scan your environment. You're practicing exercise 4, you're looking around, you're noticing high, noticing low. Whenever you see something, it catches your interest. Maybe you think it's somebody hiding. Maybe it's a cool mushroom or an animal. Look at it. Practice exercise 4. Look at it, see the details, but keep your awareness in your peripheral. We just have to do this again, over and over. Moving, looking, seeing the details, but not collapsing. With wide-angle vision, which is really the practice of coming into full visual awareness, we'll progress through 3 levels. In level 1, where most of us begin, we're in the habit of foveal hopping. When we level up to the 2nd level, we learn to enter an awareness state at will, where we can consciously expand our awareness into peripheral. However, we lose that awareness as soon as something grabs our attention and our awareness collapses back into foveal. If you level up to the 3rd level, you'll gain conscious control of your visual awareness and will no longer collapse habitually into foveal. You'll have habitualized the awareness state so that it's your default state of being. Then, as long as you retain that good habit, you'll have gained an awareness superpower that will give you a great advantage in wilderness, tactical, social, and survival situations, as well as just opening up the world and making it richer and more interesting. Awareness is key to our feeling of being vibrantly alive, and it's relatively easy to retrain ourselves into the open state of awareness that we once all possessed as very young children. If you've watched this long, I'm going to reveal the final and most important key to this, and that is learning to quiet our minds. More than where you look, more than how well you expand into your peripheral, your state of mindfulness will affect how well you see things in the woods. Why? Because remember, this is all about awareness. If your mind is filled with thinking, you will see only your thoughts. You can imagine that you have 10 awareness points to spend in any moment. When we're lost in thought, we're spending 8 or 9 of those points on the process of thinking, with only 1 or 2 points left for being aware of our environment. Quiet your mind, and you can reverse that so that you have 8 or 9 points directed towards your environment. This can be the toughest part about developing truly effective wide-angle vision. It means either a dedicated meditation practice or dedicated mindfulness practice. When our minds are running around like wild monkeys, our effectiveness in all areas of life is diminished. Fostering more awareness of your mind's activity, this is the process that will open the world up in amazing ways. If you have experience with wide-angle vision, if you have more training tips, or you try out the exercises in this video, please share your experiences, your insight, your wisdom in the comments below. If you'd like to help me co-create these videos by becoming a patron of my work, then follow the link to Patreon at the end of this video. Gratitude and thanks, my friends.